your life.
Tungahullaqagitsi tungahutsiaqitsi nunavut tungavikkut 2026 angayoqqaanganut niqaagakkauyut oqarnaarmata unnuk oqaqatigiinnaarmata Kevin qablutsianguyunga oqartiunaarlungalu unnu tamaaniittugut qaritauyatigуиннaq nunavut ilaangiyut yuuqmat katiinarneq katiluktaarneq ayornahorma ilaatnikut qaritauyatigуиннaq tabbaniiniarapta. If you are watching, joining us in English, you can join the debate that is being streamed live on Facebook and YouTube. If you can search Uvagut TV, you will find the English
Nope.
stream.
I'm off air on
the Uvagut TV tagayotikut ubalunit nunavutungavikut Facebook ngagut qinarlugu qaritauyatikun nunavut tungavik Inc. Inuktituornaarman. Matnaaqo pugullu amihut apequtigihuartamiknik tunihit talaormata aulle talaormata qaritauyatikun nunavut mute ilaleerutiliit Inuit matnauvuhi tamaitnik aperinneq ajornaaqaptigu mamianaugaluaq apequtigiyait atoqtaunninngippat kihiani apequtitsiavaulaormata tunilaortaqqi matnaaqpavuttauq tamarmik taakkua tamaanittuulluartut neruagakkauyu matnallu neruagakkangulaurappi ayornangittu ayornangillariho ila ayor nangiinnahormik mattauqilla ayornartukkuornahorlunilu neruagakkaunilukluni matnauvuhi uuktoqappi ammaluttauq mamianaugaluaq tamaaniinneruoq ayormat wili nakulaaq neruagakkauyu galuaq kihiani tuharviginiangi tavu tamaaniinna ayormat unnu pigaalaqqaartinnatta unipkaagayaangnaaqama qanuilluornaarmangaapta amihuuq mataila neruagakkauyun ukkuerutiginnaartamiknik pigaarutiginnaartamikni oqartuulluarnaarmata 3 minutes qarlutik ammalu pianik pata taakkua pigaarutingin apeqqutiit kiuyau tarpallianaarlutik 2 minutes qaattarnaarlutik kiuttarpallialertillugit taakkua apeqqutigiyauyuni ammaluptauq hivullerpaaq tamarmik kiuganikpata kiuhimalerpata noqqangalautnaarumaarluta 5 minutes amma uternaarmi yugut noqqangalautnaaqaarluta pianigiaquttaqarluta kiuyullua kannarnaarmata ahingitnik apeqqutauyuni taakkua naluna quvakka neruagakkauyut qauyahaut haqqiumattarnaarman nunguutigaangarpi nalunertarnaarama noqqartitsilarittarnaarama qauyimanaarpuhi ammalu apeq ila kiungitilluhi taakkua nipaitiniluktarlugi oqaqutihi naluneqitsiakkannertuuluarivuhi apiriluhi uvamnut taanna apeqqutauyuq oqakkannertuuluangi mangaakku tungahuktarnaarpuhi teima unnuk pivikkaqartitsinilukkartaila inungnik tuhaumakkanitsaang tuulluarnaarmata neruagakkauyuni qannoq ihumarmangaataa hivulliutiguaqayartamiknik qannoq hivulertiunayarmangaataa angayoqqaangunayarmangaataa ammalu qannoq piitsiqaruarmangaataa inungnik angayoqqaangunut
identify who the candidates are for the NTI election.
Upiguhutsaarluhi oqartarnaarpuhi ammalu apeqqutigiyauyunut toraangatsaarlugit taakkua
And we will try to direct the questions to each candidate.
Teema pigaalaorta kihaana hivullerpaamik
matuerutiginnaartarpinguniptartuulluarnaarappi
hivullerpaaq tungahuktillagu Sam alaqalak 3 minutes
start with Sam alagalak who will have 3 minutes. You may start now.
Matnak Kevin amma Uvagut TV sibullerpaami guuti qoyagivaqa tamaaniigunnarapta
I would like to first of all speak to
ilailaortut ukiunguyumi ikpigiqatigivakka uvangastam
my name is
alagalak kangersenermiutauyunga Aigo Arlene
and my wife is Arlene Alagalak,
Agbeniling ni Nutakakapsunuk.
and I have
Kulini ang
7 children, and I also have 10 grandchildren who will be born in October.
David Alagalak.
My parents are David and Hattie Alagalak, and a lot of people know them. I want to speak to there's a lot of feedback here. We have to help ensure that we work together to develop Nunavut, and a lot of the issues that we're focusing on is ensuring that the Nunavut Agreement is implemented, and our leaders work really hard to ensure that the Nunavut Agreement was protected and to ensure that we control the developments in Nunavut, whether through the different institutions of public government or other public government. There are a lot of things that they try to identify through their. I'm sorry, there's a lot of feedback. It's going back and forth.
29,000
There's a lot of feedback, and I'm hearing a double. But a lot of this is supposed to be for the benefit of Nunavut beneficiaries. And these are the reasons that I will try to answer the questions in the best capacity that I am able to, and ensure that you can look on their Facebook and message me on Facebook. You can call me on mobile, or you can 867. Sorry, there's a lot of double feedback here. It's going to be really. Yes, there'll be hunting, and we will. Thank you. Sorry, there's a lot of feedback. Thank you, Sam. Then let's listen to ऊँकलक Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Inuit. I'm from Iqaluit. And like Sam, I also know his parent, his father, as well as his grandfather Chico. He used to be a driver at the hospital. And my mother was worked at the hospital. I'm one of the oldest. I'm the oldest in the family. I have younger sisters, and I have one brother. I have 2 grandchildren myself. I also want to ensure that people know where I've worked previously and what and the other capacities I take, and I've represented both government as well as worked at Inuit organizations in different capacities. Being a board member for Nunavut, and I was being also appointed to Nunavut Trust, as well as representing various organizations throughout Nunavut. I've also worked at higher management positions throughout government, as well as Inuit organizations. I was very happy that there was Inuktitut being used to develop a plan. And I've also worked in different. I've also stood for election in various organizations such as ICC, and I've also represented many Inuit throughout the north. At this time, I'm volunteer for director for children, the
Arctic Child
Children's,
and Youth Foundation.
it's called the Arctic
Tana
Children's
tafaweri
Foundation,
tunga 2018 minik.
and it was
Isimagaya ko yakkaila
established back in the
ataqsimajakka
1800s,
atsotis qattaqsimajakka pilgaaqis qattaqsimajakka
and I've also tried
ammalupilgaaqikkanderumajakka
to work
qoyanami.
on. Thank you. It's very hard to the triple echo, and let's now try to get Paul to speak.
Kevin,
Thank you, Kevin.
Uvagut
It's a very
TV.
bad echo. It's very hard to.
Kayo
I also want people to know what I've done in the past. I was born on the land near Igloo Lake, between Igloo Lake and Pond Inlet, way up in the area around Mare River, when our families used to go inland to hunt caribou, and that's where I was born. I have lived in Igloo Lake for many, many years, and I've worked and lived in Igloo Lake for many years now. I have worked with NTI for many years, but in my capacity, I was involved with television initially as a host, and also for 10 years I worked on the televised shows, and for some of the issues that we're going to try and deal with here at the election platform. I used to coordinate a lot of wildlife issues in my work with NTI initially, and I was voted in as the vice president of TFN, or NTI. I was placed as the acting president starting in November, and then I was appointed as the president to hold the office until the next election. And from that time, I have, ever since December, I've acted in the capacity of the president up until this upcoming election. Initially, the election was held in December only. I will have to step aside in order to run for this. It's very hard to deal with the issues, but I'm very cognizant of issues, wildlife, for all. And it's very, very hard to
Inuit
and let's now speak to Jerry Kumaksutik. Sorry, there's a triple echo happening. It's really hard to discern the speakers. I have two Inuit and my mother. I'm 56 years old, and I was born in Chesterfield, Inlet. I lived there for many years. We got married in Rankin Inlet. My wife had 4 children and 5 grandchildren. Our parents lived in Chesterfield, Jimmy Kumaksutik, and Iqaluit. They were involved in the Chesterfield residential school, where they looked after various students. For example, they were acting as supervisors for many of the children. I'm running for this position in looking at the issues faced by Nunavut. NTI has to listen to the beneficiaries and report more often on the issues to the beneficiaries. The implementation issues are quite various and diverse, and at this time, there's a lot of reports that should be presented to the beneficiary, but are not. It's very hard to even get any news about developments at NTI. This causes a disconnect between beneficiaries and NTI, so that's why I'm running for this position. And in calling my parents and also the students at Chesterfield, they worked really hard to try to live in this developing territory, and being colonized was definitely something that took a lot of people and their lives. So looking to try to improve the lives of many of our beneficiaries. Thank you, Kevin.
Jerry,
thank you. And Nunakasuk, I'd like to welcome you to speak now.
Yeah, Thank
you. And I was born in Uvagut. My wife have 3 children. The 4th unfortunately passed away. So my wife is Margaret Nakasuk. I think a lot of people know her. And Moses Nakasuk is my father, and my mother is Salia Nakasuk. I grew up in Agneton and attended school, and although my parents spoke only in Inuit, and I had to learn in English in order to complete my studies, so I became bilingual as a result of education, and this resulted in many of us leaving our community. In growing up, I grew up mainly in the Inuit way of life, and I've worked in various capacities, both related to legislative assemblies as well as different organizations here in Agneton, with the HTO, with the Hamlet, as well as the co-op. I've acted in the capacity of the chairperson at the co-op, and I've also been a director in the Nunavut Planning Commission. And I worked there for 7 years, and we worked on the Nunavut land claim to work on the completion of the land use plan. It took over 7 years, and it's something we worked on. And I'm also sat on the Kuluk Energy Board, but I just recently completed my tenure there.
Inuit koyanarta semaluartu tigarata yuakki Nunavut vikkunni ammatakwa any organizations munartawi kiwai ku KI ku
I'm sorry, the feed has died. I cannot hear anyone. A very bad triple echo, and it was hard to decipher the speaking.
Andrew. Jerry
Hello, Kevin. Kuyanami.
online connect yung nang isi magamazoom mo sa kayang idanga bila Starlink mo do connect si tiga to
and to ensure I will probably I also want to comment that I'm very happy and glad that we as Inuit are working to develop a second chance in our lives, even if we underwent difficult times. There's a lot of regrets that we may go through when we're dealing with our lives, and one of that is trying to get high on marijuana or other products as well as drinking. I think a lot of us have. I personally have undergone a lot of difficulties due to trying to get high, and I know a lot of have affected Inuit. So I'd like to apologize first of all for having shown them my bad side. I've had a lot of fellow mayors. I've worked with them on Mirror River and also trying to deal with addictions as well as drugs and alcohol. So I'm very regretful about my past. But if I am elected, I will be sober and working to develop the everything to benefit my beneficiaries. So I'm very thankful that we will work together because I've also been provided assistance by my fellow directors and my, especially when we're dealing with difficult issues. I will always be thankful to my fellow residents in our community as well. However, I want it known that I don't believe anyone owes me anything and that nobody owes me. And I feel like I'm the one who owes my fellow Inuit in trying to make development issues. I've tried to develop a lot of things to ensure that the benefits accrue to our Inuit and to improve their lives. So this is what I'm trying to work towards, and these kinds of bylaws, there should be a lot of reporting on, especially the new laws that are coming up, and there has to be virtual reporting on there has to be an annual report that is provided to the beneficiaries. I think ever since NTI was developed in 1999, I would go back to previous years and speak to developments. There's a lot of news we could provide to the beneficiaries. I would allow them to understand what's happening. We should be reporting on a lot of the issues here. I'm sorry, you've already ran into 3 minutes. Now, let's turn to Kathy Tautungi. Kathy? Kathy, can you hear me?
Tema.
Is it ready? Okay. No, we can hear you now.
Kathy
My name is Kathy Tautungi, and I think a lot of people from Inuit know who I am. I have acted in the capacity as the president of NTI in the past, and also I've been an MLA for my community. My husband and I have agreed completely on my standing for election for this position. There are we have 3 children, and we have quite a number of grandchildren and even great-grandchildren. There's a lot of people in Nunavut who are aware of what I've done, that I've always tried to represent Inuit, and I've worked hard to ensure Nunavut is developed, and I've ran in many various positions. Now, in running for the NTI president, I've gone to a lot of communities, and I've heard a lot of complaints from Inuit that NTI is not providing any benefits and there is nothing tangible. And it seems like the only time NTI shows up is when someone is running for office, and then they never see anybody from NTI, and that's true as well. We Inuit have to ensure that we stand by our word because our name is going to stand forever for NTI, and we have to ensure that the funding is also reported to beneficiaries because that's who we are working for. And as well, Nunavut Trust is also controlling 1 billion, and they invest in a lot of developments in the world, but they don't actually provide any dividends to the territory. If NTI continues on this path, we, the Inuit, will continue to become more poor as the cost of living increases and the food cost increases. We're not seeing any tangible benefits, and I think the reason why I'm running for this position is because we have to change the way NTI provides benefits. We have to make sure we open up more funding for communities and individuals. I opened up the issue of royalties being provided to beneficiaries. It's now over $100 billion, and so far it's being provided to organizations that are below NTI, but it should be being given out to all the beneficiaries throughout Nunavut. I want people to know I'm also in Canada at this time. Many people in Kitikmeot feel that they're forgotten because many of them now are considering returning to NWT. I think NTI has to search for ways to get back to reconnecting with the smaller communities and to ensure how we reconnect with the communities. So, thank you, Kathy. Let's move on to Jeremy Tungalu. Thank you, Kevin. I just want to speak. I'm very proud of my fellow candidates. There are 10 candidates running for the position of president. I think, as they stated previously, they're outlining the reasons for running for the president, have outlined their parents. My parents are Eunice, and I have four children with 1 son and 3 daughters, and I love them very much. I have grown up mainly in Arctic Bay, and right next to us was the original mine of Uvagut. That was lead and zinc mine. And my father worked at the Uvagut mine, where he was an underground miner. And he worked underground, and that was his job and his career. And he's also, I think he was an adult educator as well for over 35 years. I was continually reminded when I was growing up that we Inuit have to continue to grab more responsibility, especially with regard to mines. And I was shown that this is our land that we're inhabiting, but we're being controlled by Ottawa and from institutions that are down south that are thousands of miles away. And this is something I grabbed, that I really recall that the only way to ensure we preserve our strength is to work together with the various regions, and I believe we can return to self-determination. That's why I'm running again for the president of NTI. We have to ensure that the benefits are being accrued or sent to the beneficiaries of NTI. And I think in looking at the leadership who worked hard to ensure that the new agreement was negotiated, one thing I've seen is that there needs to be more of a cooperative partnership between the GN government and the Inuit organization. Previously, but the only way to move forward is to work in cooperation with actual Inuit in the communities. I think the name is right now just being used because what we have to do is ensure Nunavut becomes the actual foundation for beneficiaries and to work towards benefits that will benefit our beneficiaries. Thank you, Kevin. Now let's move on to the last person is Gloria Uluxi. Thank you, Kevin. I also thank my fellow candidates as well as the Uvagut TV. I'm very happy to be here. I'm also very happy that any Inuit that I visited in the various communities in Kolokto, I also went to Kolokto. I was very happy to go there because they were absolutely welcoming. And I would like to say thank you to them. Right now, I'm in Rankin Inlet. I just landed in Rankin Inlet today. I'm here, and I hope to continue on to Uvagut. I will just speak a little bit about where I'm from, and I'm sure that people will want to hear more about where I come from. My name is Gloria Uluxi. I grew up in Tikilautuaq in Well Cove. And at this time, I'm living in Iqaluit. I have 4 children and a husband. I'm very happy to for that because I've been well looked after by my relatives as well as my husband's family. I think without our ancestors, I don't think I would be here standing in front of you. So I want to represent my family, fellow Inuit, to ensure that we provide more benefits. I've also been educated in various institutions, and the reason why I want to run for this position was to properly represent the Inuit and to ensure that we provide more benefits. And that's why I brought my name up for this. I want to ensure that I collaborate with many Inuit in various institutions. I've worked really hard trying to ensure that is the case in whichever capacity I've been, and I can work with any other person. I've volunteered and worked in different capacities to ensure I do Inuit. So wherever I land, I work really hard at what I'm working at, as well as the volunteer organizations, and I try to work with whomever working with me, because it's not good to see organizations that are thriving but are not giving any benefits to beneficiaries. And this is why I'm very happy to speak my name forward. Very proud of my Inuitness, and I have never forgotten where I come from, my language as well as my community. So I'm continuing to work towards my future, trying to enact change, and I'm here to represent Inuit in this capacity. Thank you. Thank you, Gloria. First of all, the first question I was brought up, which was given to the NTI, is a three-sided question. Well, read it here. And once you respond, perhaps you can speak to the various issues here. First of all, the issue brought to me responds to the Nunavut Agreement. They would like to know if you've ever read the Nunavut Agreement. Have you read the contents, and what are your thoughts? And what would you do and what would be your focus on providing or developing Inuit rights, on how you would cooperate with the Nunavut government, the government of Canada, as well as ITK, and the various Inuit organizations. Furthermore, how should the NTI president, or how do you see the NTI president? Should they be serving the Inuit in placing up in government? That's the first question. The first person to respond, and they will have 2 minutes, is Gloria Uluxi. Gloria, you can start off. Thank you, Kevin. Yes, I have read the Nunavut Agreement. I agree, and this is something I really get into when I was at Nunavut Uvagut. This was one of the courses that we were taught about. Nunavut Uvagut president, if I were put into that, I would really ensure that there's a lot of cooperation with both all the beneficiaries, regions, and I would listen to what they're going through, what difficulties they're facing, and what changes we should be enacting at NTI, especially how we work with the various organizations. I'm sure I work with the various organizations, but I want to brainstorm the beneficiaries because they're facing a lot of difficulty in their lives. There's a lot of people on the poverty line, and there's a lot of people who aren't properly educated, so they're facing poverty in their lives. So we should never forget them, because we have to ensure they're included in implementing Uvagut, and that if we want to ensure that our fellow Inuit benefit, we have to ensure we manage everything properly and just keep it healing. It's a very important issue in Uvagut. It's healing, and when we're healed, we have to provide assistance to our fellow Nunavut, and ensure that healing is provided to the various people that need it. I would work on housing, security, on education, and as well as training. These are the issues that I would work together with the fellow Inuit organizations. Jerry Natanai, you may, if you can respond to that question. Thank you. I'm also glad for the question. I also place much emphasis on this reporting. I would ensure I provide a monthly report via a podcast on Facebook. I would work with the government of Nunavut as well as the various governments, and to develop and protect to ensure that we provide tangible benefits in education. Because how come there's not very many people who are not nurses or who haven't become doctors or engineers? I think, why aren't we succeeding in educational requirements for these particular fields? I would want to ensure and conduct research and provide answers. As for government-related responsibilities, one thing I was never happy is that in NTI, I was told that this is something that the government is dealing with, and this is something that is not under the Inuit organization. I believe even under the government purview that there has to be more development done in the Inuit organization if we want our benefits to improve, and especially in looking at development, we have to develop an economic plan for every region, every community, and to ensure that we provide tangible benefits. There's a lot of issues we can look at. For example, housing. We're way past common that because Inuit made choices back in the day because they wanted us to learn English, and that's why the schools were shown. So Inuit are developing slowly. So I'm not sure that we have a development plan to ensure Inuit. I don't think we'll ever go past that. For example, pork chop. I believe this is something the time is just running away. Now let's listen to Sam Alagalak if you are free to respond. Yes. Thank you. I'm glad for the question. It's a very interesting question. As the new agreement, we signed that agreement with the government of Canada, and I recall that perfectly. Within the agreement, we were provided a strong set of rights, control over land, over wildlife, as well as kind of issues that could be dealt with by communities. I understand properly in the third question. How would I work with the various governments, with ITK? If there's any kind of benefit that will accrue to Inuit, then I can work with anyone to ensure that our fellow Inuit benefit. But
Inuit
our
atiliw
Nunavut
tanga
agreement that
ilan
we
niko
signed off on,
ayaw
I think there's points where we have to really push the government, because NTI should be pushing the government to ensure they implement their side of the agreement. That's one side. On the other side, when we're looking at the government of Nunavut, there's things under their purview. Should we grab them? If there's benefits that can be provided to Inuit, then yes, we should look at assuming that responsibility, because our Inuit are not benefiting, and there's a lot of things that, because NTI is possibly not pushing the government hard enough, and there's a lot of services that NTI has taken over because the governments aren't providing the service. So we should, NTI should do that and ensure that we can provide services and benefits that accrue to our fellow Inuit. Thank you. At this time, the next person to respond will be Kathy Tautungi. I can't hear you right now, Kathy. Is that right? Okay, can you hear me now? Thank you. The Nunavut agreement I've read in its entirety from the beginning, and starting to, as well as Article 23, that is Inuit employment until they reach 85%. Article 24, that Inuit businesses will assume contracts, but the actual heart of the agreement is related to Article 5, wildlife and wildlife management, and this also ensured Nunavut public government was created by this agreement. We gave up our rights and we got funding and money, but now people in the communities are living at the poverty line. The rents keep going up, the cost of living keeps going up, and there's not a lot of focus on owning our homes because there's not enough planning and preparation to develop Arctic-specific initiatives. There's some issues that we've just copied from Southern designs and Southern models. For example, we just copy Southern methods. Okay, if they have a mental issue, they go there or there. We should use Inuit knowledge to ensure we plan it and change the modus operandi to ensure that Inuit are assisted properly. This is something we have to focus on. And as well, if we don't change the way things are operated, for example, senior the cost of living, the ever-increasing rent, we have to work together that NTI pushes more to ensure that the voices of Inuit are heard. Thank you, Kathy. Let's now move to Andrew Nakasuk. Okay, go ahead. Andrew, thank you. Yes, I've read up on the Nunavut land claim not in its entirety, but particularly I've dealt with Article 6 in my community and dealing with wildlife issues. So I've dealt with some issues related to that, as well as Article 24. I've read up on that. I'm not being racist here or against people of different color, but the people who own businesses and who contract out, once you start finding out, there's even a lot of people from overseas that are receiving the contract, while the Inuit and our fellow residents in our communities are being deprived of their businesses, and they're losing business opportunities, and I've seen actual cases. What I would focus on ensuring that I represent my local businesses, and I would also work hand in hand with the government of Canada and the government of Nunavut to ensure that we provide actual tangible benefits for our Inuit throughout the territory. What I would focus is, if I were elected to this position, as the president, that's what I would focus on. But also ensure that Article 23, which is supposed to be prioritizing Inuit for government positions, is something I would focus on. I want to ensure that Inuit are prioritized and they have first choice, because now we're seeing a lot of immigrants in Iqaluit. There's a lot of people that come from overseas who have different skin color that are working in the government. And now, although Article 23 says we have to ensure Inuit are the first priority, they seem to be changing the emphasis and just trying to ensure that these jobs are being taken by others. Thank you. Now let's now move to Jeremy Tongaluk. It's your turn to
Kevin.
thank you, Kevin. The agreement, I
I
have read the new agreement, and I've ensured that I've read it, and there's other questions related to working collaboratively with the various government levels. Last year when I first started, this was my foundation to try to develop a future, and I want to try to develop a plan to work with the various levels of government, both the government of Nunavut and the government of Canada. When people state that they really want to work with the government, what this showed up is that there needs to be collaborative effort from NTI and the various levels of government, both Nunavut and Canada. When I first started, the first thing
implementation contract
was dealing with the implementation contract. I believe that's what it's called. There's $1.5 billion that was set aside for a 10-year period, and then it's only provided after we went and did a court case to get the money. The only way to deal with that is to ensure that we either push the governments to ensure they implement their side of the agreement, and as well the Inuit organizations within the Nunavut agreement have to ensure that we start privatizing a lot of businesses, and we have to ensure that we provide development for local communities. And the only way to provide a lot of these benefits is to collaborate with different governments, and I see that as a priority. ITK, for example, as well as ICC, the Inuit Circumpolar Conference. The NTI president sits on these two various organizations, and that's I'm identifying that, and that's how we can only collaborate with them. Thank you, Jeremy. Now let's move to Paul Ingout. Thank you. I'm very happy. This too, I've read up the Nunavut Agreement, and especially Article 5, which is the basis of my employment previously. The HTO, as well as the RWOs and NWNB, we've had to face in NTI in representing Inuit, and within this agreement, some issues, for example, the season, when they're looking at we used to really fight against any kind of season. The HTOs and RWOs worked hand in hand with NTI, and we were really fighting against government, especially when they said animals were running low, population decline. We had to try to be in the middle to ensure that we preserve and conserve our wildlife. Be that as it may, I've worked with our government of Nunavut as well as the government of Canada, and I've also signed up on memorandum of understandings to work with the various government levels and the government of Canada on housing. I just signed off an MOU previously. Inuit need their own need to deal with housing, and I'll provide more details later as we're time limited here. I want to also talk about the implementation contract that Jeremy spoke to. We have to ensure we provide more details on the implementation of the various responsibilities to the HTOs, the RWOs, and NWB. There have been negotiations on the type of operational funding for them. As well, we have to ensure that office buildings and various facilities are developed. Thank you, Paul. Just cut off again. It's now, the floor is now open to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tamba.
I can hear myself. Thank you. That's a very good question. The agreement, I know quite a number of articles that work in various capacities, but I haven't looked at it in a while, and something I would require more training in. A lot of the issues that were just voiced earlier are also what I would also work on focusing, as well as some of the issues brought up by my fellow candidates in collaborating with various government levels, as well as the different Inuit organizations. I've already conducted that work when I was at QIA, and I've also been at ICC, and at the various Inuit organizations, both internationally and territorially. I've also been the president of ITK, and one of the things I prioritized was ensuring that the people I represented was being accountable, and I knew that I would continue to represent and be the voice of the beneficiaries. So that would continue to be my focus, and especially as it relates to collaboration. I think we also must never forget the other First Nations and other indigenous people, as well as the province and territorial government, because we have to work with not just our local territorial government, but also various northern governments. Thank you. The last person to respond will be Jerry Kumaksut.
Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
I know.
Oh, sorry. I will speak to this issue because I've worked in this capacity under Nuno Trust. Now it's Article 31. They're trying to grow the money that was provided to NTI, so they provide annual funding to NTI and to the IRAs. If Nuno Trust was unable to raise funds, and NTI would no longer get any funding, and Nuno Trust have provided a lot of thought and planning to ensure that the investments provide enough revenue. And I think one thing NTI has to understand, because there's also a lot of activities that have to be undertaken that provide funding. For example, if we look at mining, if you look at Grace Bay Road, if there was development there has to be a lot of work done by NERB, by Nuno Planning Commission, and various IPGs that would deal with that, such as the Water Board, Nuno Wildlife Management Board, and as well as the Inuit Surface Tribunal that would have to be involved when the planning is taken for development. These are all important institutions in the universe, and we also listened in Article 23, Inuit government, Inuit government with the government, Article 24, contracts with Inuit, or government contracts with Inuit. A lot of work that is required previously in work, and that's required now because we have to ensure contracts are Inuit. Thank you, Chair. Let's move on to the second question that was provided by NTI. The question is, how would you collaborate with the government of Nunavut as well as the community, as well as the smaller communities, to ensure that people who are living on the poverty line, people who have difficulty in finding employment, as well as the issues faced by the communities, how will you work with them? First to respond will be, thank you. That's a very important question. As I stated previously, I stated I signed up an MOU on working cooperatively with the government, especially with the Premier of Nunavut. Furthermore, we were also at Chesterfield Inlet, or actually Cambridge Bay, where we looked at trying to open up employment opportunities with the addictions counseling facility. And we worked with the GN. If I were to say it in English, it would be a treatment center. I believe that's what they're called, where addictions can be dealt with and then they can be treated there. We also saw Nicholas. We worked hand in hand with the government when we opened a new facility for the treatment of Inuit. It's called åᕙᒍথ, that's being built now. It's under construction. This will provide actual services for Inuit who are suffering from addictions such as alcohol or drug addiction. These are the kind of things that we've already worked on that are surfacing or coming up. And there's also funding assistance we provide. For example, in Pond Inlet, we provided we provided funding for a women's shelter, for adult shelter as well, and also NTI was providing funding to provide shelter and daycare centers. And due to that funding, I've worked with the various governments to ensure that these facilities are developed. Thank you, Paul. Let's listen. Let's now turn to Jeremy Tongaro. Thank you, Kevin. That is a very important question, and that's working hand in hand with the government. Our fellow Inuit are undergoing a lot of issues and facing a lot of challenges, especially when they're undergoing addictions. I think Paul, as well, what he brought up, I've actually been involved in looking at issues such as åᕙᒍথ that he mentioned initially. I dealt with a lot of details related to that, as well as in Joe. There was a homeland, there was a shelter for homeless people, as well as a women's shelter. We have to ensure that every community has those kinds of infrastructure or facilities that are specifically to provide actual benefits, whether it be I think we can speak all day about healthcare and to try to ensure that the government are aware of the challenges being faced by Inuit, and to ensure that we encourage the government and to work collaboratively with them on a day-to-day basis to ensure that Inuit living in Nunavut can move forward and lift each other up and not just attack each other. I think people who are suffering from addictions are ones we should provide actual help to, and ensuring we funding contributions to the homeless shelters and such. Now, tell the president of NTI, this is a very difficult issue. This is something I saw in my brief role, but I think it depends on how we collaborate with communities and the various governments. Kathy, talk to me. I can't hear you right now. Yes, can you hear me? Yes. Oh, your audio just conked out. Can't hear you. I'm sorry, Kathy. There, can you hear me? Yes. This can is providing services to Inuit throughout Nunavut and the Arctic is very poorly planned, and in English, when we look at mental health, with healthcare, there has to be more services. But again, it's all done based on the foundation or the work provided or in the Southern model. You need to have a holistic style of working with the Inuit. If we're going to develop the kind of treatment to health or other issues, there has to be one facility that everybody can copy. Right now, everything is just modeled after Southern treatment centers. Another issue is the health benefit, the non-insured health benefits. The Inuit now have their own health insurance. We can have an agreement with the government of Canada on how we as an Inuit organization can provide an insurance. I think we have to plan that as well in Nunavut. That is something I think we really need to focus. I think what people assume is that the government of Nunavut is all powerful, but the government of Nunavut has no land, it has no basis, because right now Nunavut, in Inuit, we are the largest private landholder. We have a Nunavut agreement. I think we need to emphasize that the funds that are right now provided through royalties are now provided to smaller communities.
Over to Kathy.
Thank you, Kevin.
Gloria
ولوكسي. Kathy, Gloria ولوكسي. It's your chance on the floor. What I've worked on in my platform or identified if I were to be for the NTI candidacy is housing. I've identified the kind of challenges faced there, education, training. I've identified the kind of opportunities that need to be created and ensure that we look after our elders properly. And as well as the requirement to train future leaders, that we have to be realistic, we have to be accountable as a leader. And this is what I've identified in my platform that I would work for. And I think there's a lot of impact that are not spoken to. That's why I've decided to run. I think I want to ensure we understand Inuit because there's a lot of issues that are all that have to all be included and taken into consideration. I think we have to ensure we ponder on the challenges, especially related to mental health, suicide, crisis right now, elder care, health care, food security, and especially the cost of living rising. And as well, we all understand now that these are the most important issues that we need to deal with now. We have to immediately as NTI has to Inuit, and they have to conduct visits to the communities and explain to going to fellow beneficiaries. I think we have to work together
Over to Gloria.
ensure we develop. Thank you, Kevin. How would I work with? I think that was the question. How would I work with others? And question I was posed to the candidate. How I can respond to that is, I think we all know there's many studies that have been undertaken in Nunavut, both from the government and from various organizations. The reports that have been provided. The guys conducted their own reports, studies, and the reports are provided in various categories. There's a lot of reports out there. I think what we have to refer to the reports, and we should look at have they been implemented. why aren't they being implemented even though there's a report
амматтау
on that? That should
пуйгорлеққаугама
be a question. I think what
киоққоятинни
I forgot earlier,
хаамлаккуттау
that the
пуйгоққаугааллут
hamlet should not be forgotten.
нуналигни
All
тааккуа
community government
инуниттау
has to also
киккартумиммата
be included because they're representing Inuit at the local level.
аперигалермиякка
What I would also ask them,
илинниарпилиахатарсимагаккиттау
because I've learned a lot from various hamlets,
аперихаттартугит
I will continue to ask for their
пилернингиттугиннуллугаттау
perspective when I was in my capacity as emergency and other
qarijigaalugittuk
employment
isigaarmikkukalait
options. I think we have to
ilisarsivikkuut
have
qarijimammata
Ilisaksivi and other research organizations,
abe kisunek
what challenges they're facing,
tamakkua
the
tunalingni
barriers that they run into,
katibajigalait
especially the
kadutiqatigigalait
community, local
tibigalait
community
kisu
organizations, the hamlets, the
atuutaqaralaqqa
NGOs. What would
atuutaqarnersaruilaqqa
provide a better benefit?
tamakkua
What do you need done to ensure
inunniingaangata
these
qarijimammata
are provided to the actual people, because they're the ones who work with the local people.
asivaqtiit miqsuqtiit
They work
salaguartiit
with the hunters, swords, and the hunters need more support. Thank you. Let's now turn to Sam Alagalak. Thank you, Kevin. It's a very good question. I think sometimes it becomes an issue that they get embarrassed of when they can't provide an answer. What I've heard throughout my visits dealing with addictions, there's various issues that are included, such as alcohol, drugs, addictions. Nonetheless, what I've responded to is what I've heard is when they go for treatment, they have to leave their family, and that's the only way they can get treatment. And they have to leave their husband or their wives or their children in order to get treatment. That's not the way Inuit culture treats people, and I think that has to be considered, and I would place more emphasis on ensuring that there's more treatment, such as, for example, in Rankin Inlet, there's treatments on the land. I would encourage more treatment that provides on the land within Nunavut, and to work regionally as well as to work with the government of Nunavut, because Nunavut is a very large territory, and I would further encourage everyone to work collaboratively and to ensure we all speak from the same page so that Inuit are provided proper services. For example, that there should be more emphasis dealing with the drug traffickers that send their product to communities. There has to be more hope, more encouragement to our youth and our fellow Inuits to ensure that they don't just feel harmed to the point where they're dealing with addictions. We have to provide food security. We have to ensure we work with the elders because they're very aware of what challenges we face. Thank you. Jerry Kumaksiu Tiksak.
Kevin.
This is a very impactful issue that we're talking about, especially treatment and healing.
14 years ago,
when I went to healing 14 years ago alcohol, I haven't drank alcohol in 14 years because I really had to change my lifestyle. And I think some people have to make a commitment if they want to. They have to commit. Nonetheless, I think I will speak to this in English.
Recovery-based trauma center.
We have to have a recovery-based center. People who are subject to violence, subjected to various issues, people who have trauma. If we had a facility like that would provide access, then people who are treated at that area would follow healing. I think some of these are very impactful and very heavy matters that we have to consider. There's too many people who commit suicide. I used to have 2 older brothers, and this touches on us personally. And the second part, there's a lot of people now who commit murder. against their own fellow Inuit.
Pangmatay lang eh.
And some of them
Inuit
say
are so resilient.
Inuit are
If
so
we're so
resilient.
resilient, why that many murders?
Kanamali-
Why the suicide so
why-
high?
I think these are some of the questions we
It's
have to
too
answer.
normal. We have to make it abnormal somehow.
We have to ensure that KIA and QIA are
Uvagud
worked
Jerry.
in partnership.
Andrew Nakasuk.
Andrew Nakasuk,
You lalak putin.
if you can respond now. Andrew?
No. Emma.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. That's a very important question. On a personal level, I would speak to that. 9 years now, I've been alcohol free. I did not go through a treatment center, but I committed to quitting alcohol. Alcohol isn't the only addiction. We're starting to see different kinds of addictions. We're starting to see harder drugs that are being introduced to Nunavut that are even for people. Secret addiction is as well. I used to be a tobacco smoker, but I've been a non-smoker for quite a number of years. But when you're trying to stop any kind of addiction, it's very difficult to try to quit. Even when you try to entice people to quit any kind of addiction, some of them just say no. A change has to occur from a personal level, and once you commit to that change, then it has to come from within. And I think that's why I would want to work with the various governments and try to brainstorm. And if I were the NTI president, I know that my mother personally helped people who requested assistance. They would visit the elder in the home. So the treatment centers are not the only places where they can get healing. There's also local people who can provide a lot of assistance. For example, who can provide proper foods. I think we should identify elders, and if we work together with the government, then we can start ensuring that the Inuit way of treatment is given more emphasis on a holistic and truthful level, because once people want to change on a personal level and what they want to quit, you should provide options and try to provide assistance and treatment right there and then.
Andrew.
Let's now turn
Jerry,
to
not tonight.
Jerry, not tonight. Thank you. And with respect to family services or cultural wellness, at I also saw on the website of NTI that there was a coordinator that was and a life journeys coordinator. I think counseling is very important. In Clyde River, this is something that was initiated in Clyde River. It's now done entirely in Inuit. I listened in. There's a acting capacity as a facilitator as well. It's very important to have people who act in that capacity in every community when we're undertaking training and talking about Inuit and issues related to trauma. We're trying to do it while dealing with our personal pain, the kind of coping techniques and mechanisms that have to be provided. There's various categories, and I think these kinds of mechanisms should be provided at the high school level. I think I would push for and encourage that this kind of training is provided at the high school level. There's also, I would encourage more people to undertake the training in Clyde River. There's also trauma teams that are now traveling to communities that are undergoing a crisis. And I think when non-Inuit comes, it's harder, but when you have fellow Inuit who come in, even if they're strangers, it's a lot easier to speak to people, fellow Inuit, than it is to strangers. So I would
counseling
try to encourage
techniques,
counseling techniques in
coping techniques,
provide
nagiging
training on coping
kay
techniques and
pala
to ensure these are properly supported and developed. Thank you. Now the third question, we will work on that. That was also provided by NTI. Have you pondered on the funds, whether they should now provide financial benefits to beneficiaries and not go through actual services? Have you contemplated the kinds of financial disbursements that could be provided through NTI or through other organizations? Have you contemplated the kind of services and potential disbursements that you could provide? Andrew, maybe you can start. First of all, the question, can you please repeat your question? Have you contemplated or thought about actual disbursements of royalty money to Inuit?
Would you consider direct payouts to beneficiaries instead of program-based funding? And if so, what safeguards would you put in place to ensure the organization does not lose its capacity to provide long-term programs, services, and benefits to Inuit?
Thank you. That's a very important question. Funding usually runs out within fiscal years. I know NTI has a lot of different discretionary funding as well as royalties. What I would want to provide actual funding to is a support on food security, gas costs keep rising, the cost of equipment, especially during the COVID-19, there's a lot of issues that brought up. The food vouchers and gas vouchers is something I would want to turn to provide actual benefits. Another thing that the Pakistan HTO provides, the HTO purchases food from hunters and then provides it free of charge to the local populace. So I think that's something that we should focus on, is to provide funding for hunters to purchase the food and to provide it free of charge to fellow Inuit, just like our traditional ways that we used to provide food to our neighbors and such. And there's also a community feast type of issues, but I think a lot of the store-bought foods are quite expensive, and that's usually not provided to fellow residents. But that's one way I would want to focus on, is to provide funding for hunters, especially for people living on the poverty line, and people on income support could be given more country food free of charge through HTO program. Thank you, Andrew. Jerry Kumaksiutiksak. Well, can you hear me properly? Yes. Thank you, Kevin. The question you brought up, can you repeat your question? Either way, in English or in Inuktitut. Have you given thought to direct disbursements of funding where NTI would provide funding locally through direct funding, or would you provide funding for programs and services? And what kind of disbursements or programs and services should NTI undertake? Kevin.
Tanong ko sa naktakasok
We'll
ko
speak to this.
negotiators ko
Our previous negotiators provided a proper path because they conducted a lot of issues because they didn't want to just provide funding, that Inuit should be given the opportunity to work, to have a job, and if they could be provided the opportunity to work daily on a full-time basis, then it would provide more local pride. And once we start providing direct funding, then there's people who will become lazy and will depend on this funding in the future. Then it's like food income support. They're just sitting there and waiting for the money. How will it impact their mentality? But I think we should look at how is the funding going to be provided. My children are hungry. Some of them just get the food monies and then spend it on alcohol or other issues. There's some people who have not been treatment. They may, if they're given funding directly, they may just sit on their addiction. So I think that's something we should deal with first before we look at direct disbursements. Gloria Uluxi, you may respond to that question. Thank you. I definitely agree with what Gary spoke, that direct disbursement to beneficiaries just can provide more issues, especially it may cause even more poverty and challenges if funds are provided. I think we have to stand on our own 2 feet and ensure we create our own opportunities. I think we're all aware that it depends on the personal motivation. They would want to ensure that there's support provided to hunters, support for people living on income support. There has to be more service and support mechanisms that ensure that our local people have a chance to live a lifestyle that is something that they choose. So I would provide funding for the program. I think one thing we cannot just look at the present, but more for long-term planning to ensure that there's development plans down the line. We have to recall that our descendants have a properly planned out development method to look at both the short and long term and not just have band-aid solutions. The audio is no longer online. I think she is muted. I can no longer hear the candidate speaking, unfortunately. Sorry, Gloria is speaking. I'm sorry, the audio died out. I could not listen or hear Gloria's response. Go ahead, Okalik. Thank you. Direct disbursement of funds to all beneficiaries is a challenge. I think it's something that we've been debating for many years. We still haven't understood why to this date it's never happened. But I have the opinion that, as Andrew stated, because funding is sometimes a challenge, but it's very important to provide funding. But I think what's also important is if it provides an actual benefit, maybe we could provide more benefits if we did funding for services. Audio, oh, sorry, audio is gone. Cannot hear Okalik. The user is muted. I cannot hear the Inuktitut. Unfortunately, I can only see the video. I cannot
utu
hear.
tigi gunnar
To
mayagatto
use this example,
kutsitumi
in
atortoqattallertu
the high Arctic
kaatsuqtiit
is the Noctisoptic
tabakkunungagala
program that provides
kiilerjai atuinnerupalliaqmata
funding to
illinarmigilugi
people who watch out for the
tampuna
environment. I think we should look at programs that are developed such
ammalu
as
makua
that to
kaatuni
ensure we protect every community. There's also institutions such as Укăйтuvăк that provide funding locally, and we could provide funding to soup kitchens and things of that nature locally. But we also need reporting and funding reports for that. But I think we should look at existing services that we could probably devolve out to other communities to provide direct benefits. Thank you, Okalek.
Jerry, not tonight.
Jerry, not tonight.
You better put it.
It's your turn now.
Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. This is something I've thought of long. Our elders have, we've lost a lot.
Our Aboriginal title to the land. Extinguish Shimayo.
We extinguished our Aboriginal title, and as Aboriginal people, we extinguished it in exchange with the Inuit agreement. There's been a lot of things that have fallen throughout the gaps. Inuit require actual compensation, but I'm not sure how much. If I look at a millionaire, if I want to make all of them millionaires, we would have to look at something like $17 billion that we would have to have. And I think that, and even the funding now would be too small, but I think we've heard about our fellow land claims, such as Inuit, who provide twice annual disbursements. I think if I would provide the kind of reports monthly, I would look at changing the programming, because right now there's a lot of programs that are not provided by NTI. They do not provide somatic making sessions. They do not provide net making workshops. They do not have on-the-land programs. This is something I would want to create under NTI, where we provide a model. For example, how can we use the quota of the Arctic char to provide canning or to provide Pepsi or other types of traditional fishing preservation? Or can we ask people to return to their original clan lands who are aware and perhaps create camps that can now take advantage of the resources in and around their clan areas? These are things we have to look at. Sam Alagalak? Thank you, Kevin. This is something I've also thought of for a long time. I've acted as Secretary Treasurer in various capacities. I understand financial reporting. I think when in 1991, 1992, when we were asked to vote for the land claim, I think one thing that was brought up was funding, that they would be given funding. I think Inuit have been waiting for that today. Inuit have their own, some have their own employment, some are not working, some hunt, others don't hunt. Everybody has their own individual trade. There's some people who are educated. I would want to ensure everybody's on the same page and that they're all treated the same, that annually there should at least, perhaps close to Christmas or some other holiday, that there could be a disbursement. I looked at NTI's funding revenue just from last year in 2023-24 fiscal year. Just from the mining, there was $140 to $150 million that was accrued to NTI. I believe that even just half of would be like 70 million should be provided in an equal disbursement to every person who's of voting age, irrespective of whether they're employed or not employed. With 29,000 eligible voters, each person would get $3,400 annually,
Ataw siya
if
taklo
we
ne.
were to disperse that once a year,
Angon raso tino ikayo
the
ti
HTO
ilinyatuno soko sa
funding,
tiwangit siya akong nakto na pangalo
then we can ensure that the funding is not
lugo
impacted in
sigunit
HTOs and
saktindo.
different
Oyan nami.
education, but we have to look at these kind of solutions. Kasi Tautungi.
Tusaksaulok po nga Kevin.
Oh, can you hear me now, Kevin? Yes, you're now audible.
Tana tunidjutigisi mayutukaw yung Inuit ikperdu
I have brought the idea of direct disbursements in the past. We have extinguished our Aboriginal title. We agreed that there was a lot of money provided to Nunavut Trust and NTI, but whenever they're providing the funding, they just disperse it to the IRA. For example, people who provide hockey tournaments, cultural issues, they can apply. And then Inuit wants to apply for funding. There's a lot of models we could emulate, such as in Inuit Valley and Nunavut. For example, caribou is now being sold throughout Nunavut. If this continues and NTI doesn't make a change, our caribou population will crash. There's two aspects to that. Caribou can be used at home, and they can also have domestic and commercial issues. I think there's a lot of people who don't have employment opportunities, and I think we have to provide actual benefits to people. And I think our hunters require funding supports because skidoos, ATVs, and such are very expensive. We have to ensure there's funding support because the cost of living is rising, and we have to ensure that NTI changes its program delivery, and we have to look at Nutrition North as well. There's a $145 million fund for both NWT and Nunavut. Yukon and NWT use have a highway, and I think in Nunavut we have to NTI has to deal with that to ensure that the funding is given directly to communities in Inuit. Thank you. That is a good question indeed. I think I agree with Kumaksiutiksak and Gloria. We have to ensure we think of the future properly and plan accordingly. NTI has no ways of raising revenue other than mining, and as well, Nunavut Trust is basically responsible for operational funding only. And we've mandated Nunavut Trust to raise the funding, but the mines, they also have a lifetime, and the life of a mine ends. Once they end, they're no longer getting royalties. Even now, we also heard that Baffinland is contemplating their operations and how they will change. It's not just Baffinland. There's other mines that are being built because once they run out, they will stop. So if we're just going to directly disperse funding annually, then the money will start dwindling and disappearing. But if we provide a one-time disbursement, then that's possible. Nonetheless, what's scary about that proposition, once we provide a disbursement, how will we look at the future? Then it will want more. We're providing funding for elders' pension, and they've increased 150 elder support. We also provide equivalent to the hunters support. Okay, thank you, Paul. Now let's hear from Jeremy Tongalo. Kevin, that is indeed a very good question. deliberated on this issue for many years. I think it requires carefully contemplating and studying how to ensure we disperse government or actually funding to our people. I also am kind of leery because in the future, if we run out of funding, then how will we replace that? Because we have to ensure that there has to be more agreements provided between governments and Inuit organizations, because there's a lot of rules and regulations that the governments enact, and they provide funding for programs and services. I believe there has to be more opportunity to negotiate with the governments to develop that. I think the negotiators at the time really wanted to ensure people agreed that they worked to ensure the Inuit beneficiaries would agree. I think what we have to focus on is providing employment opportunities for local people and to ensure economic opportunities locally. And I think we have to research ways that Inuit can benefit. And I think when I called for previously was a 4-year funding to help raise the standard of living for Inuit. There's been planning and preparation over a 4-year period to develop a program that helps Inuit raise their standard of living and work hand in hand, and not just have people expect a handout, but to ensure people actually work towards improving their lives. Okay, we will have a short break. We'll have a short 5-minute break. Still a number of questions we have to respond, so we will have a 5-minute break. I think as we return, we will again enter the conclusions for the candidacy. If you wish to be a candidate for the position of Nunavut, what would you focus on, and what would be your priority as the president of NTI dealing with housing as well as infrastructure? And how would you look at lowering the cost of living in the communities? And how would you research them to ensure that maybe we could start with ऊᕙᒍţ? Hi, are you on?
Pwede na make Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Sorry to go.
As candidates, I think
Katigo.
that's something we're really concerned about, especially lack of housing, the dilapidated housing, the rent costs, the continual rising of rent, and as well as dealing with expensive pieces of equipment. I think we need to work with the government of Nunavut and the government of Canada, as well as various organizations that we could brainstorm with on what responsibilities they can deal with and what NTI can undertake, and how can we collaborate to ensure that we provide a full service. At this time, we should look at the kind of problems, for example, Nunavut 3000. There's a lot of communities that require housing, but I'm not sure what the barriers are because maybe they rushed in their planning, maybe there wasn't enough preparation, but this is a very important initiative for Inuit, especially when looking at expensive infrastructure projects. I would work with the local hamlets, with the government of Nunavut, as well as the various organizations to look at future planning and who could undertake what. So that is something I would definitely contemplate and take into consideration, as well as looking at revisiting what experience they have, what best practices they've found, and as well, I don't think we should reinvent the wheel and try to find out the best practices and the things that worked in the past. Thanks, Ukalit. Jeremy Tongalo. Thank you. That is a very good question. That's something we've really focused on at Inuit, and that is the continual rise of expenses. Last year, NTI conducted a study, and there was a Nunavut Development Corporation, QIA, Association, in the association, vice presidents formed a committee, and we developed a committee to review the funding that's available from the federal government to provide services in housing, and whether the organization should continue or take over their responsibility for housing our beneficiaries, and to ensure that we develop designs that are affordable and that are inclusive to our culture. I think they have to look at the kind of opportunities that relate to home ownership, to properly designed homes and housing for our beneficiaries. I think it also is related to education and training and ensuring that local Inuit could provide the kinds of programs and services. But what I saw was there was these are the kind of collaborations we need to deal with. For example, in the high Arctic, in the bathroom, as well as the kind of housing initiatives that are also related to job opportunities and having proper housing. Let's now turn to Jerry Natanai. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Related to housing, I have some issues related to housing. It's a very important matter in every community. I think every community faces a shortage of housing, and we have no timber. We cannot we cannot harvest wood anywhere. So I'd want to work with southern construction companies to look at developing modular homes that could be built down south. And a lot of times the challenges that are faced is when the shipping is done, we're already facing fall and winter, and then there's always a winter break. So there should be training, and I think there should be more emphasis on free trades training and to have the hamlets be provided funding for training and to offer job fairs and to look at and to provide encouragement at the high schools to have the students undertake this training. I think and NTI should also look at territorial-wide, regional, and local support for airfare, for shipping costs. And right now, the businesses are losing out if they're looking at any kind of support funding because right now, I believe they need to create their own stores, trying to follow the government relations, and we should look at the kind of services we have. I'm sorry, it's a lot of echoing there. It's kind of hard to hear. Now let's listen to Kathy Tautumi. Kathy, can you hear me? I can hear you. Kathy, it's your turn to speak. Well, maybe I'll return to Kathy. Let's move to Flores Olsi. Thank you, Kevin. This issue of housing is something that I've been involved with housing for a while, and I think we're all aware that housing remains the biggest challenge in our community. Even Inuit communities move to the south because there's no housing locally, and this impacts a lot of families. I think we have to work very hard to ensure that we provide opportunities for local Inuit, and we have to work with organizations, with local businesses. And we have to keep in mind that if there's people with capabilities, that we support them, and we must not forget the local people here and businesses in Nunavut. For example, the housing initiative under Nunavut 3000 spoke about constructing a number of housing to over 3,000. I think we have to cooperate and collaborate on ensuring that housing projects are completed locally. I think I would want, first of all, we should study how many actual units are being constructed in every community. And I think as well we should work cooperatively and hand in hand with creating employment and training in the plans. And these are also issues we have to contemplate. Business owners and the housing industry, and I think that are owned by Inuit. I think we have to focus on that. Thank you, Kevin. At NTI, when I was vice president of NTI, I was chairman of the infrastructure committee and dealing with housing. We developed part of the issues that have been spoken to is the Igloo Corporation. They now have a committee. They now have regional, the IRA, regional organizations will have coordinators that deal with the regional initiative. The government has their own housing initiative, which is for public housing, and this is for the public at large. That can be contracted out to businesses. That is government of Nunavut, but Igloo Corporation is an entirely Inuit-led initiative dealing with housing, and we're looking at providing housing for the regional Inuit associations. And these are the type of projects that have been given to the Igloo Corporation. And these as well may include home ownership, and as well there may be programs that were developed for home ownership, even if you're employed at the GN, at the various IPGs or any organizations, that you can apply for funding to build your own house, which you would own. And this will be operated on its own as a standalone corporation, where the money would be cycling between being loaned and being repaid. And so these are the kind of initiatives we provided. So these are the things I would focus on as a president. Kathy Tautungi is now available again. Kathy, if you can provide. There was a question, and what was the question initially? The question was, what would you focus on if you would become the president of NTI with relations to housing and more support for Inuit to get home ownership? Not just planning, but to develop it. Thank you. I think we were all, there was a couple of programs initially to private ownership, home ownership, but if I were the president of NTI, there has to be proper planning within the committee to look at the housing costs that are related to private home ownership, both working with the government of Canada as well as the government of Canada. And I think we should brainstorm, because there is the Canadian Mortgage Corporation, and there has to be consideration on the kind of housing that can be provided in Nunavut, because again, the construction costs of private ownership homes are increasing. The husband or the wife sometimes have to quit when the income is below $2,000. I would see NTI should look at a Nunavut specific lowering of costs for constructions. This is something I've studied. And there's a lot as well, the issue of dilapidated housing and mold in the housing can cause health issues and sicknesses. With that being the case, public housing should be reconstructed and perhaps rebuilt. We should concentrate and provide training for the maintenance workers locally, and we have to ensure we support them with materials, with training, and with more with Arctic specific materials, because right now the materials are generally built with southern materials. Andrew Nakasuk, maybe maybe you can hear me. Can you proceed, Andrew? Give me a second. Thank you. There's a lot of good responses, and which is a very good question to provide an answer to. This is something I'm looking at. Mukigakta, I believe, has funding specific for training as well. The other issues that were brought up, such as Nunavut Housing 3000, it seems like it was poorly planned, but all the communities, a lot of the communities within Nunavut, the local residents are very capable of building housing. And there's a lot of people locally that are skilled at working at construction jobs. I think they should use the funding from Mukiyak to conduct training and on-the-job training, whether there could be apprenticeship. Or I think we should really look at expanding the current programs at NTI at how we can improve them, because even some of the existing programs have never even reached many communities, even though the construction projects are landing in the community. So I would want to look at reviewing existing programs if I were to become the president, and I would work with the government, both the government of Nunavut or the federal government, and to work towards a longer term plan, looking at every aspect of housing and to ensure that local people are able to do the work locally, because right now we're still importing a lot of workers to do the projects, even though there's a lot of people locally that already have the skills but don't have the papers to be recognized. I think that should be our focus. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alagalak, your turn. Thank you, Kevin. And I'm glad for that question that it was brought up here. Personally, I have built houses, many. I have been a foreman in constructing various units and buildings, and I have found out due to my own experience, the cost of materials is ever increasing, and the government regulations and codes are also causing an issue because they also cause cost of living or the cost of construction materials. And as well, we only have limited sea lift capacity, and as well, there's also running into the issues of land availability. If we could look at lowering the cost of materials to construct buildings, that would be a start. I was previously part of a committee called Innovative Building Solutions in ऊvagut. That is, housing is a very important issue, so we were looking at our options, and we would want to train people locally and in other communities. I think we have to urge the governments and not just continually meet about them. I think we have to develop programs and services. I believe there was $5 million already provided to NTI or to this community, as well as Nunavut Housing Corporation. Nunavut 3000 has, has funding until 2030. They have to develop 3,000 before 2030. It seems some of the construction projects haven't even been commenced. I'm very familiar with the construction industry, and I can provide more encouragement and work with the MLA and the government of Nunavut. Thank you. Jerry Kumaksiyutiksa. Thank you, Kevin. The existing plans is something I want to study first. For example, that modular home program in Ugvet, I think it's something that's a good model, and whether that would be uh, divested in other communities, that's something I would want to study first. For example, there's five. For example, should we send them to Cambridge Bay, to Telokzok? Maybe we should look at studying existing programs as well. We should look at NCC and the regional development corporation because there's a lot of qualified Inuit who are in apprenticeship programs such as plumbing, electrician, carpentry. I think we should provide more employment opportunities. I think what I want to speak to lastly is Arctic sovereignty. I think we should use that as our basis to, for example, if we look at the heavy lift airplanes, perhaps they could airlift materials to smaller communities so they could provide, so they could supply materials for building housing locally. That's an option we should look at if we're going to go under Arctic sovereignty, and as well look at existing programs at the government of Nunavut and federal government. That is what I would want to explore in looking at that. That is pretty much the end of the questions. Every candidate will have a few minutes for closing. Let's now start with, this is for the conclusions. Thank you. I think all of the candidates have their own skills and abilities. I think the voters have to very carefully weigh whom they will vote for. What I really want to see is the upcoming future project. Inuit need proper representation, and Inuit have to have an avenue to voice their issues. We're always meeting with the federal government, and NTI is usually the point of contact. And we're continuing to work with the Prime Minister as well at, at our discussions, and we have to work with Makivik, we have to work with Uvagut, and we are at the same table, and we're able to provide a unified voice for Inuit, and there should be funding that provide directly to Inuit organizations, because we can also voice common concerns, and as well for our youth. Oh, the feed cut off, and we should be focusing on youth. For example, Makayapik was brought out, and there are different kinds of educational programs, and we can look at training. One thing I keep hearing, what is NTI doing? Definitely, NTI is not speaking to the beneficiaries. But one thing we've identified is we're not providing enough accountability to the voters. If the president mandates someone to provide information, and sometimes there's always reports provided on upcoming events as well as initiatives that have been completed, but there's not enough emphasis on communications. I think we have to be very focused on providing accountability to the Inuit, to our Inuit voters, because right now the North is very being focused on by the globe, and Inuit will have to be involved very heavily, and they have to be properly presented and work with the regional Inuit associations. because again, they're part of the NTI. The president himself cannot solely or unilaterally undertake a lot of programs because it could overlap with the regional associations. Thank you, Paul. Jerry Kumukyutik Sak.
Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Can you repeat your question again? As it, to conclude, if you have any closing remarks, you may proceed. Now,
14 years.
I have been alcohol free for 14 years and neither will I touch another drop of alcohol. I think existing programs is something I would research properly and carefully manage to ensure we provide services for our elders. Uh, we were brought up by our elders, and I would start first off with the elders, and as well with my fellow Inuit, I would try to listen to every region. There's a lot of heavy issues and challenges we face, but we can only work collaboratively, and thereby are we able to properly provide solutions. I think the government of Nunavut and the regional organizations should band together and meet to look at possible solutions. And as well, we have to go to the government of Canada and look at Arctic sovereignty. I think what I brought up earlier is resilience. Right now, that word is being bandied about. It seems to be the word of the day, even though there's a lot of strength behind some wording. But sometimes it's led by a poor leader, then things drop to a standstill. So I would want to look at and focus on healing. Part of my experience and part of the work I undertook in the past is what I would rely on to ensure I provide a path forward. So that is how I would plan out my presidency if I were to be elected. So perhaps I will just stop there. Thank you, Kevin. Andrew Nakasuk. Thank you. I would like to first thank my wife and my assistant, Leah Rosemary. I'm very grateful to people who have provided assistance as well as people who have supported me. So I would firstly like to thank them as well. People who provide advice. I'm very grateful for everyone who has provided either advice or voiced their support. I'm also very happy for people who who were able to accommodate me because even hotels are very expensive as well as the airplanes. I was very happy that people welcome me to their communities. I think what would be the basis is the need for communication, communicating projects completed by Makikiyavik, and I would look at whether it's effective and efficient. And again, I would look at various programs that, even though I'm not being racist or against people of different skins, what NTI is mandated to do is to represent Inuit and to ensure that Inuit rights are implemented. I think we've heard all sorts of different ideas, but the president has to work really hard at NTI to ensure that we focus on people who are facing homelessness, food insecurity and to ensure that they know their voices are being heard, that all eligible voters have a voice. I will try to provide support to every voter, and I will try to listen and to provide communications and reporting. And this is why I'm trying to run for the president of NTI. I'm very proud of the fact that I stopped drinking alcohol. This is my third time running for this position because I want to assist Inuit. I don't want to assist non-Inuit, whether they be Indians, colored folks, or white people. I think they can vote for their own representatives, but here I would be representing my fellow Inuit. I'm very grateful that I was provided an opportunity to speak, and I'm very grateful to all the viewerships and the people who are listening in. Thank you. Sam Alagalak, you have the floor. Thank you. Thank you, Uvagut TV and NTI. Nunavut has about 160 workers. So I've stated that all of my campaign promises, I'm prepared to undertake them, as well as housing. We know next year that the federal government and the government of Nunavut will be devolving their responsibilities and mandate to the GN under devolution. The the Nunavut land use plan is something we have to really encourage. We have to protect our calving grounds, the marine calving grounds, because Nunavut is not just a piece of land; it is our homeland, and I think I have to focus on some of these issues as well in Baffin in the Baffin region. We should look at what Baffin land does, and we should look. I would like to provide more responsibility to Hikitani because this is their home, and Baffin land, well, should be taken to court because I don't know whether they're running out of money due to the agreement, especially related to Inuit rights. I think we have to protect all of them. And as well in Kivalliq, we have also impacted by mining projects in we have to ensure we support the HTOs and the hunters. As well in the Kitakmion, Grace Bay, the port project that's been mentioned. We're, I'm not even sure if the voices of the local people were heard. I would want to push that forward to ensure NTI represents them properly. The president of NTI has to represent everyone. They cannot be they cannot be they cannot be moved by other people. They have to be very resilient. I do not touch any kind of alcohol, any kind of substance that changes your mentality. So I would focus. Very proud of that. And I was told earlier that there's so many. It's more like the non-Inuit have profited from Nunavut, from the creation of the Nunavut government. And it seems that Inuit are an afterthought, and I would focus on ensuring that Inuit are strengthened through this work. So when you vote, please vote for Sam Alagalak at the next election. Thank you, Sam. It's now here from ऊँ'qłʌʌq. Thank you. Like my fellow candidates and the people I stayed at, I'm grateful first and offer my thanks because I too stayed at people's places. I will also mention that and add to my previous comments. The federal government of Nunavut, we have to absolutely work with all levels of government because that's a given, especially related to housing. We have to work with the Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation, and where they can provide assistance, that's where they can provide assistance. And furthermore, one thing I've advocated for up to today is our language, Inuktitut, and our culture. That this has to be something deeply contemplated when we got Nunavut and the government of Nunavut. Inuit have always brought up their cultural challenges. They keep asking for repatriating cultural practices and the language, and we have to ensure that we have to encourage more ways for Inuit to be propped up and show up at the surface and to ensure we have pride in our identity and our culture. And I believe in that mindset as well. People who have businesses as well, prospective business ownership, it has really assisted many Inuit because governments have to contract Inuit businesses. And wherever they exist, we have to provide more support for them. We have to provide education, more training opportunities. That has to also be prioritized. I have I have been represented in past roles where I was mandated and trusted to undertake the leadership of certain organizations. The Nunavut Agreement, we have to place all of our emphasis on ensuring its implementation properly and effectively, and non-Inuit as well as people of color should be included to ensure that Inuit are properly planned for. They are fellow Canadians, and as Inuit, we have to always be welcoming of other cultures. We, we also have to disseminate. I'm sorry, timing is a challenge. There's still 4 people to speak. Kathy, can you hear me now? Yes, I have heard. I've been told by many people that NTI has no use for local communities. The NTI has to be closer to the people. The people who are not elected, QIA, KIA, and KIT-IA residents are not elected to NTI, but NTI has to be changed, and we have to ensure that we open up funding. Funding can indeed end, but NTI actually went to Greenland and met with Greenland Inuit, and during the NTI at the last election used $2 million for voting. I think if the practice doesn't change, that we will continue to face further issues. So we have to change the way things are operating, and Inuit need immediate support. NTI can set aside funds specifically for Inuit, both on a local and regional level. There's also existing already funding for hockey tournaments, for cultural events such as drum dancing, and there has to be money set aside for regional events such as that because I think Inuit require support now, not tomorrow, not in the long term future, because there are way too many responsibilities, and it sometimes becomes overwhelming. My priority will be the need to change NTI. We have to open up funding to the communities and to individuals. And thirdly, we have to open up funding support for snowmobiles and all-terrain vehicles, as well as to deal with healthcare issues such as mental health. We have to ensure that the planning is undertaken properly because right now we're being treated as we were Southerners. It should be Nunavut specific and Nunavut design treatment programs specifically for our people and for northern latitudes. Because if we continue just to import southern models of treatment, then it will continue to belittle the way Inuit treat their people. I'm very grateful to people who house me. I'm very grateful to Bob Lyle in Talugdog and their wife. So I will stop there. Jeremy Tongalo. Thank you, Kevin. Very grateful to of my candidates. I'm very proud of all of them. And in sitting here, a lot of the my priorities are also being voiced by my fellow candidates. And in trying to prepare for a future and trying speaking of the things we have to undertake immediately, I think what my first priority would be is the Indian Child Specific Initiative. We had an actual negotiation session with the federal government. I think we have to place more emphasis on grabbing more responsibilities as an organization to provide actual services locally. And as well, we have to ensure we train our youth to become Inuk and to be part of their Inukness and to also look at hunting, training in hunting methods, as well as local initiatives to provide training and education. And we shouldn't just follow recommendations from the government, and we should now grab the initiative and undertake actual Inuit initiatives. And there's some businesses that have started growing as well. The development corporations under the regional Inuit associations are growing. I think we should deal with a territorial-wide planning meeting so that we develop a territorial-wide and regional priorities so that Inuit are the priority for NTI and to ensure that the initiatives are undertaken by the employees of NTI. There's a lot of capable employees, and I think we have to ensure we mandate the regional associations to undertake more of the responsibility so that NTI focuses more on what is needed on a territorial level. Everybody is now looking at the Arctic, and Inuit are the ones who live in the Arctic. And I think we have to ensure we have a proper plan, both short term and long term, because everybody has undergone trials and tribulations in their life. But I think we need to focus now on moving forward from always studying and speaking of issues in the meetings. We have to now take an actual step to ensure we provide real benefits locally, regionally, hand in hand with the governments, and make sure we do that. Thank you, Jerry Natanay. You now have the floor. I'm very grateful to the people who support me. I'm very grateful to my family. We keep hearing about NTI that if the mining labs are over, they would no longer have any funding revenue. We've heard about the business models. We can also read reports. I think we should have a singular focus on, if we have a singular focus on mining, and if we use all the minings and we use revenue, there's royalty and there's issues. I think we have to diversify and look at ways of creating income from various economic sectors, not just mining. For example, the iron that's mined in the river is sent elsewhere. the iron ore, which is over 60% purity at Mere River, if we could somehow create manufacturing jobs to ensure that we create something from from the iron ore, and that would double our income. We need, but any kind of manufacturing facility requires a lot of power, and as well, as well, another idea that I really enjoyed. Thank you. We are indeed running out of time. Jerry, thank you for that. The very last person will be Gloria Uluxi. Thank you. I'm also very grateful for the local people who provided accommodation and people who came to the meeting. So I'm very proud of the people who are quite capable and all of the Nunavut voters who will come out to vote. You have to contemplate each candidate carefully and to read each of their platform promises and their priorities. And I believe we need to communicate properly with all the voters. And what I'm here for is to try to provide assistance to my fellow Inuit, even though some people feel I'm young enough. I'm very committed to ensuring that benefits accrue to our fellow Inuit, and I'm very committed and dedicated to ensuring that we provide different foundations and as well as focus on our identity as Inuit, on the skills and traditions of assisting our fellow Inuit, and to look at these foundations. And that's the only way we can change everything up here is by also assisting our youth. I'm encouraging not to be scared. It's only by applying and trying for something that you can find out whether you're qualified or able or have the capability. As well, I'm very happy. I would encourage all the youth to apply for positions, to apply for education opportunities, and I encourage that once you have an education, it provides a foundation for you to provide for your family. And I would really want to be the voice of my fellow Inuit that has a true. I want to be truly committed. I would never want to forget my fellow Inuit, and I would voice their concerns and work in partnership with the regional Inuit associations, as well as the people living in the south who now live in the southern climes, that they should not be forgotten and that to ensure that have they able to live properly and well. I hope you will vote for me because I'm voting in. I will work to my utmost in my resilience and my identity as Nino. and I will never forget my roots, and I will never forget where I come from, and as well with my fellow candidates, I'm stating that I wish them all good luck, and I hope, and I see them all have capabilities. Thank you. Thank you, Gloria. We're also at the end of our televised program. I'm glad we're, that you were able to attend to this debate. You're all candidates for the NTI president. We're also very grateful to the Inuit who listened in both online, on YouTube, on Facebook, and as well as Uvagut TV. We're very grateful that you listened in, and don't forget that NTI presidential elections will be May 27th in 2026. We're very grateful to NTI that they forwarded that, as well as thanking the interpreters. Thank you very much. As well, Uvagut TV, the technicians and the people who provided the platform. So thank you. Merci beaucoup. And I'm very glad to have been facilitating this meeting. So I wish you all a good night.